believe that the goal is to acquire 1 million Bitcoin. That's going to be massive for Bitcoin. That's basically 4 micro strategies. Every other country in the world is going to have to consider, oh, do we need to buy Bitcoin now? Larry Fink and BlackRock really have moved the Overton window where the public sees Bitcoin as a legitimate mainstream asset. Are they really saving if what they're holding is losing purchasing power? I just exchanged my dollars for Bitcoin. I just want the better money. Bitcoin has definitely changed my life significantly, how I view the world. When Bitcoin's volatile and you're first learning about Bitcoin, no one's going to be there to hold your hand and bail you out and get you through it. You have to really understand what you own. Bitcoin produces a more merit-based society where the great ideas will win out. Most people think they understand money and they have no clue about money.
What are your thoughts on his election and what the impact on Bitcoin will be for that?
I think it's going to be great. I saw both scenarios playing out with Kamala winning or Trump winning, both in the end being good for Bitcoin. But I think in terms of nation states, it's a race now to the finish, right? Trump has said he wants to put a strategic reserve, have one for the US. Cynthia Lummis has proposed a bill. I believe that the goal is to acquire 1 million Bitcoin. I don't know how they're going to do it, and if it'll pass that bill, but if it does pass, that's going to be massive for Bitcoin. That's basically 4 micro strategies combined, right? 1 million Bitcoin. And of course now, until inauguration date, which is January 20th of 2025, every other country in the world is going to have to consider, oh, do we need to buy Bitcoin now? Every other country usually, major country, follows what the United States does with a lot of things. So I think you might see nation states start moving in right now. And a lot of them might be doing it quietly because they don't want to move the price. But I would I tweeted this out yesterday, start building your own personal strategic Bitcoin reserve if you don't have one already, which just means keep stacking sats and keep buying Bitcoin and learn how to self-custody and things like that.
Yeah, it's for me, it's since 4 years now. I mean, 3-4 years now, where I'm everything that is not needed directly is going into Bitcoin. That's my strategy. I'm just 100% in there. I mean, obviously, if you have a family, it's maybe a different story because I'm just I have a girlfriend, but I'm just alone and young. If you have a company, there's difference. You should have some cash probably laying around for short-term things. But the strategic reserve is just 100% in. And if America actually goes ahead and buys 1 million Bitcoin, obviously it would be interesting how they do it because they probably cannot do it without people knowing. I think if they do something like that, obviously people will know that they will do it, and at that point the price will just rip, and maybe they never get to the 1 million. I don't know, but they have the money printer, so they have a lot of buying power to do that. But yeah, still, as you said, 4 MicroStrategy, that's a lot. I also heard today, I don't know if you saw it, but Nayib Bukele was having a phone conversation with Trump, apparently not talking about Bitcoin, but I don't know how you can talk with Nayib Bukele without talking about Bitcoin.
I know Trump has said a few things about El Salvador on the campaign trail. They haven't always been necessarily the most positive. So we'll see what happens with that relationship. El Salvador definitely made the first big move into Bitcoin, but almost every country in the world pales in comparison to Bitcoin. This isn't anything against El Salvador, but the U.S., it makes all the smaller countries irrelevant when it comes to purchasing Bitcoin. You have the country of Bhutan, I think is how you pronounce it. They're mining Bitcoin. You have all these little countries, but this is an absolute game changer. And I don't really think the overall markets have priced this in yet. 76,000, that's nothing, considering where the price can go.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true. It's also funny for me as I'm those 4 years now into Bitcoin. That's like my history, how I look at Bitcoin, and the narrative changed quite a lot. Like this environment narrative has, from my perspective, quite changed. Like I don't hear it that much anymore that Bitcoin is bad for the environment. A lot of mainstream media is going a little bit into the Bitcoin conversation, like especially like the last year, I felt like the Bitcoin conversation also in the mainstream media, and also like when you just go into real life and like in talks with people, the narrative feels like it's changing a little bit. How will that continue to change over like the next 5 years, especially if now like presidents and nation states are going into Bitcoin? It feels like then there's no going back for the narrative.
Yeah, as you said it, I don't hear anyone saying, well, what if the US government bans Bitcoin? And we always had counter arguments about that anyways. And we're not hearing about the ESG concerns since, and this probably started when Larry Fink at BlackRock really decided, all right, we're going to make a push into Bitcoin, and we're going to, and the ETFs, the US Bitcoin ETFs happening, have really changed have moved the Overton window, so to speak, on where the public sees Bitcoin as a legitimate mainstream asset. The only people still like laughing at Bitcoin are just the really, really ignorant, or the Peter Schiffs of the world, who are just kind of talking their own bags. But you don't see any of those people shorting Bitcoin.
It's also interesting. Do you think the Bitcoin ETF had an impact also on Trump's decision to acknowledge it and to embrace it? Because now there's like BlackRock and big corporations behind that.
Oh, I mean, I think it legitimized it in so many people's minds. A lot of people around Trump now that have his ear are very pro Bitcoin. I know people from the Bitcoin space really had a big push with this, like David Bailey from Bitcoin Magazine. But you also have someone like Howard Lutnick, who is the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, is on Trump's transition team, and he said only a couple of weeks ago that he has hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin himself, and that he personally, and that he plans on it being billions of dollars, and that he just keeps buying. So, and that's someone that is leading Trump's transition team. I'm pretty sure JD Vance, his vice president, has Bitcoin and holds Bitcoin. Yeah, it seems too good to be true right now. But yeah, things seem really positive for Bitcoin.
Maybe because I'm not from the US, what's the Trump transition team? What transition?
Okay, so basically, when you become president, there is someone that helps you, that's in charge of making sure you get the right people into place in your new administration, and helps with that whole flow. So the person leading that is very pro Bitcoin and has Trump's ear. So that's a good thing.
Oh man, that's huge. Actually, I never heard about that. When the guy that's basically in charge, or not in charge, but has a major influence of like who is sitting where in the position, is kind of leading the way, and there is a massive Bitcoiner. I never heard about that. Interesting.
Yeah, he was on Anthony Pompliano's podcast a couple of weeks ago. It was a really good episode. Definitely, if you haven't, check that one out. Not that I'm trying to pump other podcasts on your show, but it's really interesting. I was engaged, and definitely I would check that out. And it's not just him. RFK is a Bitcoiner, right? RFK Jr., and he's supposed to come in not to be on the economic side of things, but just all these people who have a vested interest in Bitcoin being in the new administration's extremely bullish for Bitcoin, regardless of how much Trump even gets Bitcoin, which I know that's still up for debate. Some people are like, oh, he's just pandering to Bitcoiners. He has surrounded himself with people who are Bitcoiners through and through.
It's interesting for me. Sometimes I think he just acknowledges that he has to be for Bitcoin. Like he has no clue what Bitcoin actually is, and he's like, yeah, okay, I need their vote, and that's why I embrace it. That's kind of my understanding of it.
Yeah, again, um, but it might not even matter whether what kind of understanding he has, as long as the people around him understand and he follows through on it. So only time will tell. We have 74 days, I think, until the inauguration. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, will be really fascinating to see all that playing out. But it's a great topic. I think the next few years, like the next like especially next like 1-2 years, will be extremely exciting. Maybe like the next 3-5 years, but we'll be see. When we now have nation state, let's have this thought a little bit further down the road. When we have now nation states adopting Bitcoin, and we have kind of this FOMO of countries actually buying it, is that just like the starting point of like fiat completely crashing, and we have a Bitcoin standard? Is that the path towards that, or how do you see that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how that will take place. I think there will be signs of when you see that it's going to be all other fiat currencies before the dollar that start to slip. So it's not like overnight Bitcoin is just going to be the world reserve currency. A lot of things are going to have to happen in the world. One for that to happen, and also I guess there's a difference between it being the world reserve currency and replacing all fiat currencies, right? Because it could still be the reserve currency, but fiat currencies still exist. So it's as good a guess as anyone how that's going to play out. I just know that you need to make sure you're holding the better money. So when it does play out, you're not left holding the fiat bag, so to speak.
Yeah, you don't want to end up with the wrong. It's kind of amazing for me how there are still a lot of people, and they're not acknowledging that they're making a decision if they have only US dollars or only euros. I hear people literally saying like, "Oh, I don't I just save my money. I don't want to invest it." And then I'm like, "But where do you save it?" Like, and then they're like, "Yeah, euros." And then I was like, "Yeah, that's an decision. Like that's an investment decision. You're putting, you're betting on the euro being worth something in the future. That's the same betting decision as you would go with the dollar, or you go with the Bitcoin, or you go with like a real estate property. Like you're making a financial decision."
Yeah, and are they really right saving if what they're holding is losing purchasing power, right? They're not even saving. They think they're saving, but they're not saving. And it's this, especially in more developed worlds, inflation's a little more insidious because it's not as obvious right away because it's a lot slower. It's one thing if you're in like Argentina or Venezuela or Lebanon, you see how your paper currencies trash, right? But the other fiat currencies, the more established, ones like the dollar or the euro, the British pound, whatever, you don't see it as quickly. So people don't understand that it's not a savings account when they're holding fiat currencies. It's a losing value account, right? That's what we should start branding it, right? You're losing your time, you're losing your value account. And I don't even talk about Bitcoin from an investment perspective. If I'm being like straight with someone, sometimes you need to know your audience. But for me, like people like, do you invest in Bitcoin? I'm like, oh, I just exchanged my dollars for Bitcoin. I just want the better money. I'm not thinking about, oh, this is a better investment. I'm not making an investment decision. I'm just making a better decision. I don't know if that's just semantics or not, but it would be the same thing. If I gave you the chance, if you had Argentinian pesos, right, and I'm like, do you want dollars instead? You'd be like, yeah. You'd want to switch into the better money. So that's what I'm doing with Bitcoin. I'm just switching into the better money.
And I think semantics are really important, actually. Like just semantic, I think it's really important how we frame things and how we say things. That's why when I always like, I even when I talk with someone and he's like, oh, like you put all your money in Bitcoin, I was like, no, I put all my financial energy into Bitcoin, because putting money in Bitcoin would assume that Bitcoin is not money.
Right. It doesn't even make sense. I'm not putting my money into Bitcoin. That is my money. Bitcoin is my money.
So
Yeah.
I think semantics may make a lot of difference. But how are you seeing Bitcoin actually? Like, obviously, you have to know your audience if you orange pill someone. But how do you look at Bitcoin? There are people that say like, oh, like it's an asset. Oh no, it's a way of life for me. Like there's so many different avenues you can look at Bitcoin. How do you see it?
Well, Bitcoin has definitely changed my life significantly, how I view the world. I work in the Bitcoin world now. I own a business that's all, focused on Bitcoin. I'm talking to you on a Bitcoin podcast. So Bitcoin, so I'm cautious to call it a way of life because in the end, Bitcoin is money, which is a tool. And it's still, the important things are life, and not to get too sappy, it's still like your family, your friends, how you treat other people. So if Bitcoin's your way of life and you are a shitty person, it doesn't really matter it's your way of life. It's a big part of my life. I couldn't see myself not involved in the Bitcoin world in some way. Um, I almost have my entire net worth in Bitcoin, but I really kind of have, and like when you think about it, leveraged into Bitcoin in a sense because my business is affected by how Bitcoin does. Right, I own a merchant apparel company that's Bitcoin themed stuff. So if Bitcoin goes down, usually that isn't great for people like getting all excited about like buying merch. I work in the Bitcoin industry, so if Bitcoin's going down, that's not good for me. So I'm like super attached to Bitcoin. I just have a little hard time calling it a way of life. But it has definitely bettered my life significantly. And, it doesn't need to do that for everyone in such a massive way. I don't want to say it's like the panacea for everybody where it's just going to fix everything for them. But I don't know. Did I answer your question? I feel like I've talked in circles a little bit here.
It's for me. It's also interesting, and yeah, you have definitely answered the question because when we look at Bitcoin and how it was like in the beginning of my podcast, I wanted to start a Bitcoin podcast that is just like focused on like the path of people into Bitcoin, but that got boring after like 20 episodes. But from that, I know how actually Bitcoin changed a lot of lives. But I always wonder how much of that is because we are in a super early tribalistic energetic community that are really passionate about it really early on, and such a revolution needs an extremely passionate extremely tribalistic community to begin with to even have a chance of pulling that off. And I think that's where most of the Bitcoin has changed my life narrative comes from. My guess, and not that, oh yeah, I changed from like fiat to Bitcoin, even though I think that's also a contribution because your money just got better. So your foundation of how you value your time, how you value your financial energy just got an upgrade. But I don't think this magically fixes everything. But your environment, all of a sudden you are with passionate, hopeful, optimistic people. This makes you passionate, optimistic, and hopeful. I think that's more of that, and I hope we can take as much from that early community towards the whole life. But my realistic me says like, oh yeah, we are just in a very small community, and it will not be the whole world.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because a lot of people, when you say there's a Bitcoin community, they go, there is no Bitcoin community, right? Like it's a decentralized thing. Everyone comes to it from their perspective. I've made amazing friends in the Bitcoin world. I've connected with a lot of people, but still your Bitcoin journey has to start with you understanding Bitcoin and building your own conviction. Because when Bitcoin's volatile and you're first learning about Bitcoin, no one's going to be there most likely to like hold your hand and like bail you out and get you through it. You have to really understand what you own. So the it being tribal or community based, um, there's something to that, but ultimately it's about individuality and taking on responsibility for yourself to really understand Bitcoin. Um, and yeah, that's really
It's the aspect of nobody holds a hand is interesting because when you look back at the last cycle, I think the last cycle was the cycle where all those Bitcoin only content kind of formed. Before 2020, there was not as much Bitcoin only content, and now it seems like there's so much Bitcoin only content. Or you disagree?
yeah. I don't want to say there aren't like resources to help people think things through, but ultimately you're the one making the decisions. That's really what I mean. Like you are the one that, you know, if the last, 4 years has been the first time for you into Bitcoin, you're the one that was buying Bitcoin maybe at 50 and 60,000 and then watched it go all the way to 16,000. And no matter how much other people say, oh, it's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. Bitcoin, this is just what Bitcoin does. If you don't have the mental model yourself, it doesn't really matter what other people say. So I always tell people when they ask, when they're new, like how much Bitcoin should I buy? And my first answer is always you shouldn't buy any, because if you have to ask that question, you're not ready. And then they always push back, obviously, and I'll be like, okay, maybe like 1% of your net worth or something. I'll throw them a bone there. But ultimately, like you're not ready to take a big position in something like this if you don't understand it. If you don't understand that this is, like you said, a historical moment, so to speak, right? This is a revolutionary money that how many humans live during the monetization of a new asset like this? Gold thousands and thousands of years ago, but this is completely different in a lot of ways. Obviously,
it feels like maybe it feels for me like it's more impactful or more meaningful, but maybe that's just because I live now here. But yeah, it's something huge. It's a once in a generation thing. Definitely, like if you have in every generation something that's big, that's now our thing. Like that's I believe the thing of this generation that will change a lot. That not a lot of people have on their radar. I mean, there are a lot of other big things like the internet itself, AI. A lot of people see, but I almost feel like Bitcoin is more fundamental because it's money and not just information. Even though information is extremely important, but that's how I look at it, at least for the Bitcoin revolution. One thing that I was wondering also, when you talked about currencies that are inflating more, and we kind of have to, like, when we talk about in Europe or in the States with inflation, it's not that obvious. It's a big problem. It's like a slow hidden problem. I'm shocked that the world reserve currency is one of the first countries to have a president that is talking positive about Bitcoin, and it's not so many other like African leaders, Indian leaders, and other countries leaders. I mean, we have Nayib Bukele, we have Bhutan, we have small places like that, but I'm shocked that such a privileged place like the United States is kind of one of the leading countries in that. Kind of defeats the argument of like the countries that need it the most will adopt it first.
yeah. People come to Bitcoin for multiple reasons. Like generally, it's either out of like greed and curiosity or necessity. And I know you mentioned, some like lesser developed countries being like, why wouldn't they come to it first? But a lot of these lesser developed countries, the people at the top, there's a lot of dictatorships and authoritarian type like regimes. The people at the top are doing fine there, so they have like no incentive to really upend what they have going on, as long as like their life's okay. As far as the U.S. being the leader, yeah, it does seem a little ironic, but at the same time, most of the capital in the world like comes to the U.S. Still, people feel safe putting their money in bringing money into the U.S. So it's no surprise that a lot of the money is coming from the U.S. because that's where most of it is, right? Most of the investment activity happens in the U.S. So it's not surprising that U.S. persons would be lobbying their leaders to start adopting Bitcoin. So we'll see.
Are we now at the point where Bitcoin kind of has to work? Like Bitcoin it's like it has to work, or like there's some major black swan?
I mean, it does work. I don't know about having to work. It does work, right? Every 10 minutes, new blocks are mined. On average, it's had 100% uptime for the past like 12 years or something, since 2013. Maybe there was a little blip where it didn't. 11 years. It does work. Does it do everything that everyone wants it to do today? No. Will it do everything everyone wants it to do in the future necessarily? Maybe not on the base layer. But that's for smarter people than me to figure out how to make it work. I just understand why this technology is so valuable and why appreciation of this asset seems inevitable, in terms of how it's all going to play out, in terms of which nations adopt it first, if all fiat will fail, if Bitcoin will become the world reserve currency. It's hard to really say.
One topic that I really want to also get into with you, as you have a company in the Bitcoin space, how on the one side it was for you, like founding something in Bitcoin, and then also the impact of that. Like, let's first start with how did it came that you went ahead and Bitcoin was such a big passion of yours that you don't only want to just like hold it, but also like actually contribute something to the space? How did that come to be?
Yeah, so it was like kind of like a long journey. In 2013, I first bought Bitcoin. I didn't understand it. It was like $120 per Bitcoin. It like tripled, and I sold it. Paid attention, got back in like 2015 through 2017. Went down trading like the altcoin rabbit hole, which is a bad rabbit hole to go down, but it was a lesson well learned. I kind of really refocused on Bitcoin end of 2019. I listened to some podcasts. One was Bitcoin Tina. He did like a 4-part series on Bitcoin Magazine. I read Jeff Booth's book in early 2020, The Price of Tomorrow, and I'm like, holy crap, like this thing's been staring you in the face for years and you didn't get it. And then all of a sudden I started like kind of putting all my net worth into Bitcoin slowly and steady. Anytime I'd listen to a podcast, more of my wealth would go into Bitcoin. Like every single time, I'd be like, I don't have enough of this. Then I wanted to tell all my friends about it, right? When you think, you could help the people around you. Not everyone wants to listen. So I'm like, all right, where am I going to talk about it? So I went on Twitter, because that's where like most of the conversation was, and just started talking to people about Bitcoin. People started connecting with me and following me. By early 2021, the company Swan Bitcoin, the CEO Corey reached out to me. I started running Clubhouse rooms for them in 2021. Hold on, I gotta take a sip of water. Sorry, a sip of my soda. Actually, it's not water. And then in early 2022, I had a lot of exposure at that point in the Bitcoin world. My now business partner, Ryan, reached out to me about founding FOMO 21. Hold on, sorry. Excuse me. I have a little cough. And he's like, Neil, I've been following you in the space for a year or two now, and I've been in the merch and apparel space for over 20 years. I'd love to do this in the Bitcoin world with you. So we talked, and I'm like, I'm in. So him and I have built this company over the past 2.5 years. We've shipped goods to over 60 countries. And yeah, I have like a really fun time with it. I tell people I get to bring memes to real life, right? I get to put memes on t-shirts. So, I never saw myself as someone who was going to become, a developer or, submit some Bitcoin improvement proposal. But if I could like touch people in a little way everywhere I could, I was like, all right, well, this merch thing sounds cool, and people all around the world will be wearing Bitcoin stuff. It will start conversations, and it's really cool now. I go to conferences, I see people wearing our stuff. Yeah, it's been an awesome experience in terms of like starting a business in the Bitcoin space.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. Just a quick side question. If you would have to like pick one, like if you would have to like one meme over all the other ones, what is your favorite, your best meme that you like the most?
Oh my God, that's such a difficult question.
Because there's so many out there, right?
They're all my children, all these memes. No. I don't know if I have like one favorite. Obviously, like HODL is a very important meme. I think Matt Odell, stay humble, stack sats. I think he's the one that came up with that. I think that's important just to kind of be humble through this journey. There's a point where you and me, we didn't understand Bitcoin at one point, and you gotta, everyone's on their own kind of path. So just kind of, and knowing how volatile it is, it's not always going to be up and to the right in terms of Bitcoin's price chart. So that one's important. All the memes, they've all had like a different impact on me. There was in terms of our merch business, one of the most impactful memes off the bat was when the New York Post back in like 2021 or 2022, sorry, they came out with an article that says study finds majority of Bitcoiners are psychopaths. So I made a t-shirt, Bitcoin Psychopath, and I was first teaching myself graphic design back then, put the shirt on the site. People loved it. I actually spelled the word psychopath wrong at first, and I like flipped two of the letters. And I said to people, oh, I'm sorry, I'll send you like the new one. They're like, no, we love it because it makes us look crazy and more like psychopaths that it's like spelled wrong. So that was like the first meme that like I went on a t-shirt and like got a lot of action on our site. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stories like that. And I'm just really like thankful that, you know, things have happened for me in the Bitcoin world where I get to have fun and have a good time. Um, and it allows me to increase my Bitcoin position. It allows me to increase the network I have and the friends I have. So I'm really thankful for all that.
I love that, and it kind of gives away my second question already. But it's like the impact that a Bitcoin business had on you. One thing that also I'm really curious is like, if you have Bitcoin in your business and you obviously have it as a treasury strategy also, it kind of moves up the hurdle rate. Like if you're a fiat business and your cash is like just parked in fiat, and maybe you have some bonds or like some other strategies or whatever you have as a company outside of Bitcoin, you're really incentivized to like spend money. Like let's have there are some marketing opportunity. Let's just like buy that small company. But even though maybe that is a shit decision and maybe even like it's a bad decision, but if you have Bitcoin as a hurdle rate, it's kind of hard to beat Bitcoin because it's doing like the 100% the last 5 years, and it might keep doing that. So how do you look at a business from like, do I spend now Bitcoin for this marketing campaign, or like, is it better to keep the Bitcoin and grow more organically? How do you go ahead as a business and decide where to spend your Bitcoin, and how will that also impact businesses in the future?
Yeah, what I would say is, fortunately for our business, because I have built up like my own following on Twitter and social media in general, you know, I have distribution channels to market that don't cost us anything. Me and my partner actually put basically no money into the business. It self-funded itself like right off the bat, which is pretty remarkable. So we haven't really had that challenge of, oh, should we put money into the business, or is it better off just buying Bitcoin? Because most of the marketing has been on my social media, which is free. I mean, obviously, it's my time, and I don't just let anyone do that. But in terms of like my own business, it's not like costing us anything for me to say, "Hey, we have this new T-shirt, and this new Bitcoin psychopath T-shirt. You know, come and buy it." Yeah, it's a decision everyone has to make. If you're really passionate about building a business, you should do it because, you know, like again, what I said earlier, Bitcoin, it's just a tool. It's, you know, money is just a tool. And if there's a way you want to add value to society and something that you're going to, that you feel passionate about, do it. You know, you don't know when those opportunities will leave, and there will always be chances for you to keep accumulating Bitcoin. Maybe not at the price you'd like, but ultimately, what are you going to just like sit with your Bitcoin and never like enjoy life and do things, like create businesses that you're proud of? If the sole purpose of your business is I just want to make money, you know, then maybe just hold Bitcoin. Like what's, you know, but it should be something where you're excited about going to work every day and something that gives you joy.
Absolutely. Someone actually asked me that, I think a week ago or something like that. And he was pondering around the question of like, he has a good paying job and he can stack actually a lot every month, but he's not as happy with the job and he really wants to go ahead and do his own thing. And he kind of was like in between, like, do I stack now more because Bitcoin has a big opportunity? And if I leave that now, maybe I have to invest some of my Bitcoin to that and go for something big. And I was like, hey, like that. First of all, like it's not my decision, but I always go with the gut. I always go where my emotional Robin would go. Maybe that's a bad decision, but that's just like how I work and how this podcast actually came to be. And I think it's hard where you have this opportunity. Because sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't want to say like it's a one size fits all situation. You know, everyone's going to ultimately make their own decision. But as you said, like you said, going with your gut. Ultimately, the only things I've really regretted is when I don't go with my gut. So, you know, go with your gut.
Absolutely. And I think that I always try to feel like, okay, in like 20 years, when you look back at that, you probably regret more not doing it. Even if it fails, like you can look back and say, like, at least I tried. Like, at least I
And that's
knew
what
that
you'll
it
learn, and
failed.
you'll learn from that, right? Like you learn more from your failures than you do your successes.
Absolutely. Yeah. One question on the topic is like, when all the businesses all of a sudden have a money that they have to use, like in the scenario where Bitcoin is actually like really widespread, what impact do you think that overall will have on like the startup world, venture capital world, maybe on the business sides overall, when we have Bitcoin as the new hurdle rate? Maybe it's not going up 2x every year because it will be widespread, and maybe it's just going up, but it is going up in purchasing power and not going down as fiat.
Yeah, I'm not like an expert in this area. What I would say is with any investment in life, you're always thinking about opportunity costs, right? Like can I make if you're an investor, can I make more money just holding Bitcoin or should I invest in another company? Clearly people like Michael Saylor think I'm just going to hold Bitcoin, I'm just going to keep accumulating Bitcoin, this is the better play. Um, if we lived in a world where Bitcoin was the only money, people would have to be really certain that they wanted to part with their Bitcoin as something that will continue indefinitely to appreciate in value. And you can't print more of it, and no one's there to bail you out, right? There's no like Bitcoin printer. There's only ever going to be 21 million or almost 21 million, I guess, technically. So, yeah, I think it just goes to Bitcoin will force people to make smarter decisions, and the people who make dumb decisions on investing in businesses, the Bitcoin will leave their hands. But that could make for a better society because maybe we'll have better capital allocators holding the money.
Absolutely. I hope we come to a point where we have more quality overall. I think that if I have one hope, what happens to the business world with Bitcoin, it's like more quality, and let's not just like move fast and break things. I mean, still try a lot of things, not be afraid, but maybe with a little bit more quality, not like, let's just throw money at 1,000 startups and see if one sticks. At least
Yeah, it'll
that's
definitely take a lot of inefficiencies and out of the system. I do wonder, like you said, though, if maybe the whole grow fast, break things, if that creates some opportunities for people who wouldn't have had them. But I think ultimately, like Bitcoin produces a more merit based society where the great ideas will win out. So I think it's a net positive, actually, for sure.
absolutely, yeah, really cool. One question that I ask all of my guests is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
What can you learn from me besides Bitcoin? Um, I would just say, like, my life has not been a straight line. Like there's ups and downs. You think you have it, like you think you know where things are going, and if you would have told me just 5 years ago that I'd be sitting on your podcast right now, I'd be like, what? I have nothing to do with the Bitcoin world. Like what does that have to do with me? Like I'm not going to be on this person's podcast. So just be open, keep an open mind, realize what you think you know may not be so, and realize everyone else is on their own journey, going through their own experiences, and maybe be a little less quick to judge and be a little more kinder to our fellow human beings.
Was Bitcoin for you a big positive turning point?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it destroyed a lot of the previous like mental models I've had about how the world works, in terms of economics, finance, markets in terms of valuing time and the way we interact with each other. So yeah, it had a big impact on me and a very positive impact on me.
That's what I keep hearing. I have a lot of hope. That's one reason why I have a lot of hope for the future world, because I just like hear like, oh, people discover Bitcoin, people will discover a lot of Bitcoin, and all those people who are discovering Bitcoin, they have like some positive with it. But yeah, really cool. Perfect. Then we have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked a question for you. What is the most difficult topic to understand about Bitcoin?
What is the most difficult topic that I now understand? Because there's still some topics I'm not like an expert in. I think under this is gonna sound like a cop out answer, but I think it's like understand, and this is important, is you're never going to be an expert on everything in the Bitcoin space. So yeah, I guess that really doesn't answer your question about like, could you ask the question one more time?
Maybe I rephrase it a little bit. What do you think when people come into Bitcoin? What topic are people struggling the most to understand
Okay.
about Bitcoin? I think that is a better
Okay.
phrasing of the question.
Well, I think most people think they understand money and they have no clue about money. So that is the first huge barrier, is what is money? Once you answer that question, you can really fall down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. But until you just understand what money is, admittedly, I didn't understand what money was until, I was in my 30s, right? Which is crazy because it's something we just grow up with and deal with every day, but we don't really think about it. We're like, oh, it buys us stuff. Things go up in price over time because of inflation, but we don't really know, what that means. It's just kind of like built in to society. So it just, I don't know if it's the topic people struggle with. It's just a topic they don't even know they need to know, and it's a topic they don't even know that they don't know. I know the wording of that might be confusing, but.
Yeah, it's like the example with the fish, right? Like the one fish is like, oh, the water is wild today, and the other fish is like, what is water? And I think we handle with money all the time that it's so. Like, of course, I know what money is. Like here's a $1 bill, like that's money. But they don't really ask, like, okay, like, is that even money? Like, where does money come from? What is money? How is it made, and how does it come to me? And so, like, it's really interesting for me when I look at that question. And you said like, oh, till my early 30s, but there's a Michael Saylor who said in the beginning on his orange pilling journey that he, with Bitcoin first, asked the question, what is money? And he was 55 when he came into Bitcoin. And he was the longest serving CEO of a publicly traded IT company or something like that. So like, like
Yeah.
a guy you assume knows quite well how the financial system works, but he never asked himself, apparently, as he self-declared, never what money actually is. So it's like not knowing in your 30s what money is, it seems to be not that bad. But you should ask that question.
Absolutely.
A lot of people should ask the question. It's also always interesting when you ask people in the entrepreneur, like, what is that even? Yeah, really cool. Thank you so much, Neil, for being on the podcast. Before I let you go, where can people find you, reach out to you, also buy the merch?
Sure. If they want to buy awesome, cool Bitcoin merch like this shirt, go to FOMO21.com. You can find me on Twitter, or X as it's now called, at Neil Jacobs, NeilJacobs. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. You can find me there as well. And you could find me at conferences. I'm always at conferences. Are you going to be in Vegas at the Bitcoin 2025 conference?
100%. I
You
will
get your
also
ticket
be.
yet?
I will be even speaking there actually.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so like I was first time ever a speaker at a conference in Amsterdam, was completely overwhelmed because I never stood in a I never stood on a stage with more than 50 people, and those crazy people from Bitcoin Magazine put me on the main stage as a moderator.
Wow.
So that was a new thing, and I will be in Abu Dhabi also. If you're also
That's
there
awesome.
in Abu Dhabi, I will be, and I'm actually going in 4 days to El Salvador to adopting Bitcoin. I'm really looking forward to that because I never was in El Salvador.
Awesome. Have fun. They're lucky to
Will
have
do.
you.
It's something that I encourage everyone to do. Like going to conferences. I think that's the one thing that made everything that I now have with Bitcoin and the podcast and speaking at conferences possible, because I went 2 years before at Bitcoin Prague at that conference. That was the first one, the first bigger one that I was. So I always encourage people like, hey, go to conferences. Like if you can make it, go there. If you financially cannot make it, at least go to a local meetup. They're always there. They're free. And meet other Bitcoiners in real life. It's really a game changer. Was it also something big for you?
Sorry again? Say again?
What was the Bitcoin conferences and going there also something impactful for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's great going, seeing people who they're only internet people until you meet them in real life. You make great friendships, good relationships. If you want to break into the industry, it's a great way to start. So yeah, I don't plan on being in Abu Dhabi or El Salvador, but Vegas is next on my list. So hope to see everyone there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Neil, for being on my podcast. Also, thank you so much for everyone who is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.